Hello, my name is Owen Young. Welcome to the ClearPath OS 2200 Release 20.0 update for System Performance Monitor, SPM. System Performance Monitor, SPM, is a new component for collecting and reporting statistics intended to replace the Software Instrumentation Package, SIP. In Phase 1 of SPM, introduced in ClearPath OS 2200 Release 20.0, SPM now collects all data previously collected by SIP. However, internally, the Exec converts all SPM data to SIP format, and SIP remains the interface for data retrieval and reporting for Release 20.0. SPM IO_Trace is the exception. SPM IO_Trace replaces SIP IO_Trace. There is no impact to third-party products using SIP interfaces in Release 20.0, except for those that access SIP IO_Trace data. In a future release, the Exec will no longer convert the collected data to SIP format. SPM interfaces will replace the SIP interfaces. At that time, all third-party vendors must update their products to use SPM formatted data and interfaces. Unisys will update user documentation to contain all record formats. We removed SIP IO_Trace and replaced it with SPM IO_Trace in Release 20.0. SPM IO_Trace collects data equivalent to SIP IO_Trace data. However, the Exec writes that data to an audit trail in audit format instead of writing it to a file or tape. Help Systems updated PAR 11R1 to support reading IO_Trace data from an audit file. The Exec automatically configures this audit trail, SPM IoT Audit Trail 20, in Release 20.0. The customer can configure SPM IoT to be any other audit trail number, but its name must remain SPM IoT. Unisys removed all functionality related to SIP IO_Trace from the SB key-in and ER_sysball $, since users can no longer turn on or control SIP IO_Trace. Users turn on SPM IO_Trace using the SLC key-in or the SPM $control call interface. The SPM feature introduces a new audit type named SPM and two new default audit trails named SPM and SPM IoT. Both trails are audit type SPM. The SPM audit trail, which defaults to trail number 19, contains SPM statistical data. This audit trail, like the SPM IoT audit trail, is automatically configured in Release 20.0. The user can configure it to be any other audit trail number, but its name must remain SPM. Tools such as PAR do not support the analysis of this data. In future releases, Unisys will document this data and specifics about the trail. SPM IoT, as previously discussed, contains SPM IO_Trace data, which replaces the SIP IO_Trace file. PAR 11R1 is required to process the SPM IoT audit files. The Integrator Recovery Utility, IRU, supports both audit trails. Unisys has implemented new interfaces to control SPM in various ways. The following interfaces control SPM collection and IO tracing. SPM $control allows users to change SPM settings, and the SLC key-in allows operators to turn SPM audit trails on and off and change SPM timer values. Pictured is an example of how to use the SLC key-in, introduced in Release 20.0, to turn on SPM IO_Trace collection. First, enter cons mode, then enter SLC on SPM IoT. This will open the SPM IoT trail and start collection of SPM IO_Trace data on the SPM IoT audit trail. Just typing SLC shows the status of each configured SPM trail. Customers can use the SLC key-in to turn on any configured SPM trail, but in this example, SPM IoT is turned on. Pictured is an example of how to use the SLC key-in to turn off SPM IO_Trace collection. First, enter cons mode, then enter SLC off SPM IoT. This will close the SPM IoT trail and stop collection of SPM IO_Trace data. Pictured is an example of how to use the SPM $control call interface, introduced in Release 20.0, to turn on SPM IO_Trace collection. Similar to the SLC key-in, customers can use the SPM $control interface to turn on any configured SPM trail. In this example, I used a UC program to turn on SPM IoT. In this program, I defined an SPM control function 0102 packet structure based on the packet displayed. I populated the packet and called the SPM $control interface using function 1. The output displayed in cons mode is the same as the SLC keyin. However, it adds the user ID of whoever executed the SPM $control call to the line containing the time when the trail was turned on. To turn off the audit trail, replace the function field with 2. Unisys has implemented other interfaces related to SPM collection. The SPM $data interface allows users to get statistical data. The SPM $access interface allows users to write their own records to configured SPM audit trails. The SPM $PGM ops interface allows users to change local SPM settings for programs. And the SLB keyin allows operators to change SPM collection and auditing settings. Statistical data returned by SPM data is currently restricted. Collection of this data is functional, but not documented for general client use. The code exists for third-party partners to develop tools to read and analyze SPM statistical data. OSAM and PAR do not support collection data requested from SPM in Release 20.0. We did not complete the full transition from SIP to SPM in Release 20.0, but Unisys and the third-party developers of OSAM and PAR are working to use SPM data in a future release. In Release 20.0, Unisys provided documentation for all new user interfaces. Call interfaces are documented in the Exec System Services Programming Reference Manual and the Exec System Services Administration Reference Manual. New keyins are documented in the Exec System Software Operations Reference Manual, and new configuration options are documented in the Exec System Software Installation and Configuration Guide. We updated the Exec System Software Administration Reference Manual to contain a more technical introduction to SPM, along with some record formats. The only SPM areas documented in the Exec System Software Administration Reference Manual, or elsewhere, are informational areas. These areas contain information related to the configuration or state changes in SPM. However, Unisys will not document collection areas, which contain statistical data, until a future release. This concludes the presentation on System Performance Monitor for ClearPath OS 2200 Release 20.0. Thank you for taking time to learn about this new functionality.